that's what we got to do.
Regulations that you say that you have in place right now. From my understanding, some of those regulations that are in place right now, some companies are more or less grandfathered. Is that the case?
You'd have to give the specifics on it. I'm not sure, and I can find out which ones are and which ones aren't. I don't have that stuff off the top of my head.
What's the date on the last set of regulations? I'm not good with dates.
Yeah.
The end of June? Anybody? End of June, something like that?
Are you talking about the new regulations?
The new 4 regulations that were put in place?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, like that's the policy that is going to be driven. I'm not sure where it stands in terms of, like, obviously you can't put policy in place until the legislature's sitting. So companies have said that they're going to abide by those, and I believe, you know, there's been a few little hiccups along the way in terms of the seismic testing, from what I understand, but you know, for the most part, I think they're following what they laid out. Most of them have to do with the actual drilling itself, which, you know, we're still a ways away on that.
What do you think about the fact that a number of companies that have leases in New Brunswick are currently being sued and charged in other locations for breaking the regulations? Why are we letting companies who have such a bad track record and bad history come in here?
Well,
why are we not looking for companies? If we're going to do it, I mean, at first I don't want to do it at all, but if we're going to be doing this, why are we not looking for companies who actually have some ethics?
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty unfair to say. You said yourself that they've been accused of this.
They've been found guilty in a number of places.
Well, you know, some have, some haven't, and certainly Southwest that is in New Brunswick right now has a relatively good record, that's for sure. It's an industry, you know, you're going to have industrial situations where you might have a spill, these type of things. It's all about putting the proper regulations in place to deal with those things.
So what do you do with the regulations? Are they going to have to move, or are they going to be told, oh, here's a $1,000 fine? Bad boys.
I'd have to look into the actual penalties that are in place, but certainly what the idea is to have not just the regulations, but the inspections that basically make sure that they are living up to what the regulations say, and making sure that if they do break those regulations, that they have to remediate any issues that they caused, that there be penalties that would be involved with that, and to make sure that the penalties are stiff enough that there's every motivation for them to follow those regulations as best as possible.
And who's going to pay for this monitoring? Where's the money coming from? Is the government paying it, or will the industry pay it?
No, the regulations.
And who's going to choose the monitors? Will those be chosen by the communities, or will they be chosen by the industry as well?
There will be third-party inspectors or government inspectors themselves.
And will the community have a say in who these inspectors are?
We'll obviously have any kind of issues that are going to communities. There'll be consultation to
like the consultations we're having now.
Well, you know, I guess the thing is that you've got to remember that we're still working on the regulations themselves. You know, it's hard to discuss these things while it's still on the go. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we pull everything together so that we've got. Pardon me?
Is it hard to discuss them in public, or is it hard to discuss them in private?
Well, I think you have to have the regulations that you want to put forward ready to actually have something on paper to discuss. Right now we're accumulating the information that we're learning from as we go to different jurisdictions, make sure that we're putting best practices in our regulations. But until we get those put down on a piece of paper, we have to have something to discuss.
So how can you allow drilling and testing and whatnot without having those regulations in place prior to them coming in?
The regulations that we have in New Brunswick are more than adequate for the level of activity that's taking place right now.
I'm sorry, I have
when you go into a situation where you have possibly, you know, 100, 200 wells that are potentially going to be drilled, that's when the volumes get to the point that you need to have those regulations. You need to have those inspectors that are capable of that kind of volume.
Do regulations involve policies?
I'm not sure.
Well, there's certain policies certain things that the government and these companies are supposed to be doing and they're not doing. For me personally, they're supposed to be consulting with First Nations people, which they haven't done.
From my understanding, that there has been discussions with
First
Nations, with the chiefs, from what I understand.
Which chief? I'll tell you right now, Chief Candace Paul has not been consulted, has come up with a position paper, and has written a letter to the Premier in regard to being snubbed and also being against shale gas.
Yeah, like as I say, the information that I have is that there have been discussions between, and I can't
also, the Malice Grand Council, which does represent quite a few people, they have not been consulted as well. The Malice Grand Council is a group of people that would take information to other communities and, you know, get feedback. They haven't been consulted either. So we want to know, myself personally, I want to know which First Nations person, whether it be chief or a community member, has been consulted.
I don't think that information for you. I don't have
Well, and I think you do, because I think you're being blindsided. I truly believe, because if a company is telling you that they have been consulting, and we know that they have not, they're lying to you.
Yeah, well, I guess what's your definition of consulting them? I mean, there's been discussions with some of these groups, and but consulting is not just basically having one group say we don't want you to do this.
I think you have more than one group here, though, telling you that they don't want it.
I think the thing is that what we've got is a situation where we were very clear during the election that we were going to move.
You weren't clear. You were. The comment that was made, the statement that was made, was natural energy. It did not say anything.